Welcome to this Roehampton University Explain Everything on the PS assignment. We've designed the assignment so that it provides you with a model for ongoing professional development. Essentially, we're asking you to think about a problem in your practice, such as a specific student that doesn't seem to be making progress. We would like you to think carefully about how you may solve this problem by reading about possible interventions, and these all come from the literature. You then use these interventions to teach. You experiment, essentially. You observe closely and use critical judgment at all time. You then go on to evaluate, not necessarily by doing primary social science research, but by carefully logging what you see, collecting examples of student work, maybe even taping conversations that you have with students. And then you either accept that the interventions worked or reject it in order to begin the loop again. There are 3 broad areas of choice. SEN, so you could look into a specific student with autism or dyslexia or ADHD, or disengagement, and there are disengaged students in every classroom, or challenge, and again, in every classroom we have students that we need to challenge. So choose one of these broad areas. Part A, which is due in February, is your summary of the reading that you have done, which will really focus on a critical engagement with various recommended strategies. So try and find at least 5 strategies from the books and evaluate them. How good do they seem? Why do they seem good? Are these strategies rooted in data? So end with a simple conclusion about which strategies you're going to try out in your school. And again, think about evaluative language. This seems to be the most convincing, the most promising, because. So one of my favourite books on dyslexia is this one by Mortimer and Dupree. You can see that it's targeted at you. It's all about achieving QTS. It's cross-curricular. And it's about the secondary classroom. So it's absolutely designed for your cohort. So on reading this text, I've pulled out a couple of strategies that they recommend might help dyslexic students in the classroom. And these are writing frames or model answers. Now, what you need to do when you're reading Mortimer and Dupree is ask, well, on what basis are they suggesting that writing frames are a good idea? Have they actually shown them to work? Are they just citing somebody else's research? If so, how robust is that research? How big was their sample size? How much evidence have they gathered? And so on. So you can start to critically engage with some of these strategies that you see. There'll also be a level of intuitive engagement because you are in practice and you will be able to imagine what might work. Then in part B, you need to teach the strategies or use the interventions that you've chosen and very systematically gather evidence as to how well these strategies are working. Now again, I'm not talking about a whole methodologically justified social science experiment. I'm talking about photocopying student work. I'm talking about asking your mentor to observe you with these particular students. Once you've finished part A and part B, go back and have a look at part A and make sure that it now fits together well with part B. You don't want your different parts of your essay contradicting one another. As I've just said, you can include examples of student work in an appendix, and these are really powerful. So if you're arguing that at the beginning of your time with this student they were struggling to do X, then you intervened and then you've got evidence that they can do X, then that will be really, really powerful if you include a finished mathematical question or a piece of writing or a transcript of a way that a student is now speaking. And to end this, I'm just going to briefly run over what the assessment criteria are. So you need to know what the module is all about. And in this instance, the module is about taking an area of practice, using the literature to inform your choice of intervention, trying out the intervention, and systematically gathering evidence as to whether that intervention has made a positive difference. So some of the pitfalls that people fall into are just making up their own ideas as to what a good intervention might be. Don't forget, what we're looking at in this module is your ability to link theory and practice. So do ensure that your 5 strategies that you write about are all from the literature, that you critically engage to explain why you've chosen the 2 or 3, and then systematically gather evidence. At M level, we do need you to engage with a range of academic literature. So that means published books and peer-reviewed journal articles. By grey lit, we mean things like newspaper articles or blogs, and they are not necessarily as reliable or as academic as journal articles. Make sure that you're critically engaging with the work. Don't just summarise. If you're going to paraphrase or cite something, tell us what you think about that. Does it build on your understanding? Does it contradict other people's cases? What do you think of it? Please just don't patchwork together other people's ideas. So when you critically engage, think about using words like well argued, convincing, or incomplete. This shows that you're judging the work, and to judge something you have to have engaged critically with it. Linking theory and practice is more difficult than it sounds. Ideally, you will be able to use the theories that you've read in the literature to inform your teaching, and then once you've taught them, once you've used those interventions that you've got from the literature, you reflect back on how good the theory that you read was. So you're starting to evaluate and critique theory in the light of your teaching. And if you can close that loop, you're well on the way to becoming an autonomous professional. And finally, we really need to see at M level very well structured and presented work. So please think about using topic sentences, which are sentences that start paragraphs and flag to the reader what the paragraph's going to be about. Internal paragraph cohesion means that the paragraph has a unifying theme, and maybe you've shown us that you're going to go from the most important to the least important elements within that paragraph. Please stay focused on the question in hand. It's a simple structure in this essay, but it is very easy to get drawn into irrelevant asides. So stay on track. Please proofread. There's no excuse with word and grammar checkers for careless errors. So do put your work aside for a few days or hours and proofread it really, really carefully before you hand it in. And do follow the Harvard referencing guides. There is an explain everything on these guides so that you can understand fully what is expected. So finally, good luck. We'll look forward to reading your essays, and if you've got any questions, do just ask your PS tutors.